Hey guys, Tyson Popplestone here. Welcome back. Coming at you from Melbourne once again. I've been here for a little over a week now and doing my best to make up for 9 months worth of no tanning with the little bit of sun that we do have here. It's a tough effort. I'm so pale. Anyway, I'm going to complain about that another day because you probably don't care. While I was here in Melbourne, I decided to catch up with Rachael Kable, who is a mindfulness mentor and also the host of the Mindful Kind podcast. For anyone who's interested in the podcast scene, you'd be well aware of the fact that the Mindful Kind podcast is constantly top 10 worldwide in the health scene in the podcast section. Rachel's message is striking a chord with people all around the world. And it was a really cool opportunity to catch up and chat to her a little more about what mindfulness actually is. If you're anything like me, I think sometimes you hear the word mindfulness, but not 100% sure what it means. So I caught up with her and I wanted to find out, hey, when you say the word, what is it we're talking about? And we go into that in quite a little bit of depth. And we also talk about how mindfulness in such a busy schedule, in such a full-on schedule that so many of us are taking part in, can really help us just find a little bit of breathing space, can help us just relax and be able to take a step back from the high-paced life that I'm sure you guys are aware that, so many of us operate at. If you guys feel as though you're working a little too hard and working a little too fast and just don't have any time for a little bit of you, this is a podcast I highly recommend. If you're interested, guys, jump on the show, my website to get the show notes, tysonpopplestone.com/podcast. Click on the episode and everything that we mentioned in today's episode will be just there. While you're there, if you're interested in getting an email update from me each week with latest blog posts and latest podcasts, jump on tysonpopplestone.com/newsletter and you'll get 1 or 2 emails each week from me just with the latest. Guys, you're in for an absolute treat today. Rachael Kable is a superstar making a big impact in the world of mindfulness, and I'm really excited not only to have the chance to sit down and chat with her, but also to bring this conversation to you. So hope you enjoy it as much as I did.
I'm the soul challenger, I'm the road damager. Now behold the cold and the straight magical. Cause the sky brings fires and the strong grow weary. The heroes built blood in a blast and a fury. Pray on the power and pray to your father. Cause all of the quakes in the universe resonate to your heartbeat and your faith.
I want to say welcome, but it's sort of awkward to say welcome now that we're sitting in your kitchen, studio, whatever this is. I feel like I'm really lucky to be here. So thanks for having me around.
No worries.
I'm really excited to chat to you, and it's cool to have the chance to catch up a little bit last minute, obviously, with the way things worked out with me coming over earlier. But it's nice to have the opportunity to be here. But for those of you, for the listeners who are super interested in mindfulness, for the people who are really keen in learning more about it, for the people who are really interested in, okay, where do I even start? Can you give us a little overview before we even get into it about what mindfulness is and what makes you so passionate about it?
Yeah, of course. That's a great question. So mindfulness is really about being present in the moment and experiencing life the way that it happens. So for me, I used to be really caught up in thinking about the future, and I'd get really caught up in thinking about the past and, kind of just going over and over my mistakes and going over and over the things that were going to be coming up that I could possibly get wrong. Or I just got really caught up in my head, and it was a really anxious kind of feeling to constantly be living like that and trying to predict, and it was a really hard way just to live. And I learned about mindfulness when I was volunteering on a helpline for the Anxiety Recovery Centre for Victoria. And I just realised that I never really lived in the moment. I was always out of the moment. So being able to come back and sort of tune into my senses and feel my breath and listen to my breath and notice things that were happening in my body, it was a really powerful experience because it gave me a break from all these kind of crazy and really ongoing thoughts that were just taking me completely out of my life. And I feel like the more that I've done that, the more that I've felt really content with where I'm at in my life. I haven't been thinking I need to get married to be happy. I need to live in a better place to be happy. I need to, achieve all these things that I think that I need to be happy. I can be happy right now.
Yeah.
And I just feel like the more that I've adopted that mentality and tried to be here now, I've felt like there's all these things that have happened that have just improved in my life. Like my relationships are stronger and more authentic, and I enjoy my creative activities like writing and doing interviews, talking with people, even something as simple as sitting down and having a conversation with someone. I used to be so distracted just thinking about what are they going to say next? Or, oh, should I have said that? And, it was always what's happened before or what's happening next and never what's happening now. But you can't really listen when you're thinking and you're distracted by those thoughts. I never used to be able to do interviews really because I was always distracted, and it was really hard to answer a question if you weren't really listening. And it was just a really hard way to be living. And I think I'm really passionate about mindfulness because it's shown me so much how to enjoy my life and everything that's part of my life, my work and my relationships and my hobbies and I don't know, spending time with my dog.
Yeah, you're beautiful. I love that little dog as well. I hope it warms up to me by the end of this interview because that was a shaky start. I thought I was going to make such a good first impression with him. But one thing that you mentioned that really stood out to me and I can fully relate to is the fact that we're always thinking about the future. And I think this is something that's not unique to obviously me or you, but everyone I speak to seems to have this sense that they can never enjoy the moment right now because, there's something happening just around the corner. And I think it's so easy. And one of the things I always write about is the fact that it's so easy to get caught up living in that moment or living in the past or the future. And, you get excited or depressed or whatever it is that you're thinking about those situations. But when it comes to mindfulness, I hear people like you speak about the fact that it really allows you just to be in the moment. It really allows you to experience the now a little bit more. But for people who don't understand exactly how that works, could you give us a bit of an overview of how you actually become a little more mindful?
Yeah, definitely. So it's actually really, really simple, and it's surprising how difficult it can be to practice sometimes. If there's a really persistent thought, it's actually hard to disconnect from that thought and to be a bit more present, but it's actually really simple to do that. And the more you practice, the easier it does get. So for example, if I was washing the dishes, it's easy to get distracted and be thinking about what's going to happen next or what groceries do I need to get or what do I need to prepare for tomorrow. But if you can switch off from those thoughts, even just for a couple of seconds and feel the warmth of the water and, smell the soap and even just that really simple activity of cleaning something can be quite satisfying sometimes. There's all these little moments that we can miss sometimes. And there are lots of different instances in life where you can be more present, I think. Even when I'm going to work in the morning, I'm on the train for about an hour. And I could easily be sitting on my phone or, thinking about the day ahead and getting kind of stressed out or, wishing it was the end of the week already. Yeah. But if I'm sitting there and I'm doing like a meditation or just breathing and, breathing in for 3 counts, hold for 3 counts, breathe out for 3 counts is a really nice way just to kind of warm up to.
Is that one of the ones you do?
Yeah, definitely. So it just brings you into the moment a little bit more and helps you tune into what's actually happening. Looking around and seeing all the different people or watching the sunrise. I can't actually watch the sunrise at the moment. The mornings are like so dark and the sunrise doesn't rise until I'm actually out.
It's like my life in London right now. Oh my gosh, fully appreciate where you come from.
Yeah, it's so dark and I'm like, oh, where's the sunrise? Come on. But it's nice to just sit there and even look at the darkness and just think, I'm so comfortable and safe on this train and the nice light and it's warm in here and, appreciating all those different things that make up the moment that you're in. There's so much that makes up every moment that we're in that we don't even realize. Even right now, there's so many colors and so many shapes and textures and things to notice in this moment that we don't always appreciate, or they're just easy to overlook because they're part of our everyday life. But it's funny because the more that you start practicing mindfulness, the more that you start to realize how many different things there are to be mindful with.
Yeah, 100%. It really does. And one thing that I think is so refreshing for me, and one thing that I always notice is right now I'm staying in Melbourne for a few days. I'm staying with my family and they've got 3 little kids and they're a bit cheeky and they stay up too late and they're a little bit of trouble. But at the same time, what I love about these kids is the fact that everything to them is so interesting. So, for example, we went for a walk to the park and one of the little kids, Memphis, he's 6 years old. Everything is so exciting to him. He's running around and, whether it's a dog running around in the park or him chasing his sister in the park, he seems so excited by it. And I've just turned 30, so that was 24 years ago for me. So I'm going, man, that's not really that exciting for me. But one thing that was so refreshing about it was that I noticed that he was just so in that moment. And I guess when I look at a kid, they sort of demonstrate mindfulness in the way that I understand it. They're just where they are right now. They're not worried about the past, the future, whatever else. it's so difficult to do because obviously, as we've already established, the fact is we get so caught up in, what's coming, what's behind, where we're going. Where did you even know where to start? How did you know, okay, I've got to improve this. This is where I'm going to get started.
That's a great question. I think it was sort of that the more that I experienced what mindfulness actually felt like, the more that I wanted to bring it into my own life. I think that what you noticed about that child is so true, that children are really in the moment. They're very present. And what's really interesting about that is the fact that we were once like that, and we've learned to become something different. We've learned to think more and to ruminate or to predict the future, to get anxious or, depressed about things that we've done in the past. And it's actually funny because it feels quite natural to let that fall away and to become more present. It's really interesting that that's how we start out, and we just, depending on, all these different circumstances, we learn to be different, whether it's our environment or our genetics or, all these different factors that can come into play. But being able to watch a child and see that the way that they interact with the world is the way that we used to interact with the world, and we can relearn how to be a bit more like that. And it's funny because I've had a lot of people ask me about how to be a more mindful parent, and it's funny because I don't actually have any children of my own, but I did nanny for quite a few years, and I loved watching these kids. They are so intent on what they are doing, and they are so not fazed by their own thoughts and their own feelings. They just kind of accept them and let them go and move forward. And it's funny because that's something that I've really wanted to practice more and more, is being able to let go of feelings or let go of thoughts and move forward. We have learned to kind of grab hold of these things and keep them very close to ourselves and to bring them back up in our minds and everything, but we can learn to let go. And I think that's a really powerful practice that we can start to incorporate a little bit more into our own lives. The fact that it's okay to have all these different thoughts and feelings, and the way that children do, just to, feel them when they're there and think them when they're there, and then they can just fall away.
Yeah. So when we say mindfulness, is mindfulness an umbrella for a sort of a set of practices, or is it more of an approach to lifestyle? So when we speak about mindfulness, things like meditation and everything comes up. Are there any particular practices that you do that help you be more mindful?
Yeah, definitely. There are lots and lots of practices that I do just in my everyday life. It does, for me, kind of feel a bit like mindfulness is I like to think of it as mindful living is the thing that I'm trying to do more and more of. Like, obviously, we still need to think about the future and the past at some times. We need to make goals so that we can move forward. But, being able to, I think, let those things go when we want to is something that can be really important to try and practice. And that's where mindfulness does come in. It helps us to switch off from those things and to switch on, I guess, with the moment that we're having. So there are lots of different ways that I like to practice. I've been going to a lot of yin yoga because that just gives you this space where it's like there's no distractions really for an hour. It's just tuning into your body and your breath, and it's really nice to have someone there to help guide you through, the body scans and feeling your muscles kind of lengthening and stretching out, and it's nice to have a little bit of help with that. But other than that, there's just lots of little daily practices that I do, like sitting down with a cup of tea and, trying to actually focus on the flavor and the smell and how warm it is. And, like I mentioned before, playing with my dog, if I go down to the park and I'm throwing the ball, like just watching him and seeing how happy he is and noticing how that makes me feel, noticing the weather and the way that feels, the clouds in the sky, the colors. Yeah. There's so many different things that there is to notice in each moment. And I think that the more, like I said before, the more that you do start to tune into these things, the easier it becomes to notice them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. What was it you said before? Yin yoga.
Yeah,
what is
yoga.
It? Well, I've never heard of yin yoga. Really? It sounds really fancy.
It's not. It's really simple, but it's so beautiful. So basically each pose is held for about 3 to 5 minutes, and it's a really supportive practice. Most of it I do with my eyes closed, and you're lying down generally. Doing different poses that are kind of easy to maintain for that amount of time. And the idea is that you don't go all the way in so that you're feeling really pushed. It's so that you can actually hold it in stillness and breathe into the sensations that are happening in your body as you hold those poses. So I find it really, really relaxing. And it was a struggle at first, actually, because holding each pose for that amount of time and trying to be still, lots of thoughts do come up, and it does take practice to switch off from those.
Oh, that's such a good point. I think I started doing some meditation about 2 years ago for the exact reason that we've spoken about here. I think growing up, I would have referred to myself, I don't know if I was an anxious kid or I just tuned in way too much to my anxiety and it made me think I had it worse than everyone else. Yeah. But I was definitely, if you ask the people in my family, like, yeah, Tice was a bit anxious. And I think still sometimes I'll get caught up doing that. And when I say doing that, being anxious. And I think one thing that's helped me a whole heap that I go on about it a lot is the fact that meditation's really helped me take a step back from my thoughts, because I think so often when I was stuck on a thought rant or whatever you want to call it, when my thoughts are just going crazy, I'll just assume that was just a part of myself. I couldn't really separate myself. And I love the fact that when you sit down, someone explained it to me as your thoughts are like a movie going across the screen in your mind. And that was really refreshing to me. So now when my mind's going crazy, it's cool to be able to go, okay, take a step back, look at the screen, actually see what's going on here. You don't have to actually act based on what it is you're feeling. You don't have to be depressed or excited or stressed or whatever. It's all a really big choice.
Yeah.
For me, I sit down and it's a 20-minute thing each morning where I'll just set a timer on my phone and I'll just go quiet and try and keep coming back to my breath, my focus. I'm the worst. My mind goes so fast, as you can probably tell by how fast I talk. Good. But one of the big things is just being able to take a step back and really slow that down. And I know that meditation has become a really hot subject, especially in Australia, in the West, for the last, I don't know how many years. I've become really aware of it, probably the last 2. What do you think it is that made it such a hot topic? Why do you think mindfulness, meditation, all this has become so relevant to us?
I think that's really interesting to think about. But in today's society, I think there is a lot of emphasis on being busy. And as a result, more and more people are feeling stressed and trying to plan and trying to predict and, you know, feeling this pressure to achieve goals and getting very caught up in the future. So I think it's kind of natural that we've progressed more towards trying to be a bit more mindful and trying to meditate and go to yoga. You're right, these things are becoming a lot more popular at the moment. And I think it is quite a natural thing because as soon as there is, you know, some kind of problem, people want to fix the problem. And I think that busyness and rushing and stress, you know, it's not necessarily a problem, but it is something that people are really challenged by. And I myself have been really challenged by in the past. It was something that I realized I didn't want to have for the rest of my life. I wanted to be able to be happy with what I have and to be a bit more grateful and, just to appreciate the fact that this is my life right now and this is where I am and these are the things that I've done and I'm really happy with that. I have ideas for the future and I have things that I want to achieve, but if I don't get there, then that's okay too. I think it's really natural, really, to be coming back more to this mindfulness and meditation just because it's in answer to the overwhelm.
That's a really good point. I think so many of us get caught thinking that our joy is going to be found in the next big achievement. And I found this in every aspect of my life. I used to be a middle distance runner for about 12 or 13 years. And whenever I'd run a personal best, I would always be so stoked and feel as though all my hard work and everything had paid off. And I'd feel that way for a day. And then I'd get up the next day and I'm like, all right, I have to run faster. And I always assumed that once I got to a certain time or started running internationally or started winning big races, that feeling of satisfaction would just sink in. But I felt as though like there's a monkey on my back that just kept getting bigger and bigger. And no matter how hard I tried to run faster and no matter how much faster I did run, that monkey would just keep getting bigger. And I realized slowly that, okay, far out. Okay, maybe my joy isn't going to be found in this actual thing. But I think one thing that I find really not intimidating, but I think can be confronting, and especially for people listening who have never even really looked at or listened to anything about mindfulness, they probably listen to you and like, oh man, but this chick's probably got it all together. I mean, she's got a podcast flying now, she's got a blog that's flying, and people all around the world are really inspired by your message. But is anxiety and things like that a big struggle for you? Is it something that you wrestle with, or how do you? If you were to explain yourself, what would be the biggest changes in your personality or your approach to life since you've started this more mindful way of living?
I think probably the best way to describe it is that I just feel more calm. I don't know how else to describe it, but I did used to just feel so overwhelmed constantly, and I felt like I was always trying to find the new way to fix myself. I felt like there was something broken inside me, and I don't even really know why I felt like that. It was just a struggle. Like I woke up every morning and my thoughts were racing and I was questioning constantly whether what I was doing was right or wrong, and I don't know, it was really difficult. And when I was in year 12, I was in a car accident that was quite traumatic. The car rolled several times, and it was a really difficult time to go through, and it brought up a lot of that stress and anxiety. And it was right before my year 12 exams.
Oh my gosh. I hope you got an extension.
I didn't. I didn't tell anybody for several days because I was so kind of shocked and overwhelmed and trying to process this major thing that had happened. I wasn't actually driving, so it was this thing that I felt like had no control, and I had no power over this thing that had happened to me. And it actually, in hindsight, was kind of a good thing that happened to me, because I'd been struggling so much with my stress and anxiety. And then I realized that after this car accident, I didn't feel any more stressed than normal. And I thought, whoa, this is really weird. Like, this huge thing has happened to me right before my exams and nothing feels different. And that was kind of a bit of a wake-up call for me, in that, you know, I am living day to day like I've been in a car accident. I'm always stressed, and I am always worried, and I am always thinking about things that have happened to me in the past and kind of reliving the past, or thinking that the next big thing is going to be what fixes me. And so it was this huge wake-up call that, you know, I don't want to be living like this anymore, and I need to find a new way to be. And I was so interested in learning about the mind. I'd actually already tried to get into psychology at university, and I did get in after I'd done my exams and everything. I just wanted to learn more about the mind, and I wanted to understand anxiety and stress and depression and everything else, you know, that there is so many different things to understand about the human mind. And after I did that, I started volunteering on the helpline, and that was when I discovered mindfulness and meditation a little bit more and started to really explore that. And it was kind of, I guess for me, it felt like my answer. The more that I did it, the more that I started to feel like I was the person that I wanted to be. And that natural feeling, I guess, that I was talking about before, that it's natural that people are trying to be more mindful and to meditate more in answer to this overwhelm and this busyness and this stress, I guess for me is kind of a reflection of what happened in my own life.
Yeah. So from this point, for the time of the accident, the time of getting into uni, and obviously a massive interest in psychology and just the way the mind works, what point did you decide, okay, I'm going to start making a little business around this. I'm going to start actually sharing my message with other people. I'm going to start writing about it. And tell us, well, I'm going to go into your podcast in a minute because I'm such a massive groupie of your podcast, like people all around the world. But what did that transition look like from, okay, this is a part of my life, to, well, it must be a part of others' lives. I'm going to start trying to help these people.
It's actually really funny because I wasn't sure that I wanted to just be talking about mindfulness and meditation. I was very much about self-care in general and well-being in general. And I have a lot of different passions and interests, you know, from yoga and eating well to, mindfulness and meditation. So I've always had a lot of different interests in well-being. And I started off with my blog kind of doing a little bit of everything. And then I was trying to actually think about a topic for the podcast. And at first I was going to do something on happiness, and then I was going to do something on meditation. And then I think it was my boyfriend, Deck, was like, oh, the mindful kind is a good name. And I was like, okay, yeah, I can do something about mindfulness. The mindful kind, that sounds pretty good. And then, it just kind of happened from there. And then the more that I did it, the more that I wanted to learn. And then the more people wanted to learn from me. And I love that I learn every day about mindfulness, and that it's still a journey that I'm definitely on. I think that it's a journey I'll probably always be on, and hopefully I can just keep sharing more and more things that I learn. So that's my funny little story about, I didn't even think of the mindful kind. It was my boyfriend, so credit to him.
Yeah, all credit to him. That's incredible. So you mentioned that it's something that you obviously go out of your way daily to invest time in learning about mindfulness and just getting a better understanding of, you know, how this stuff all fits together. Who are some people that you recommend, if anyone out there is thinking, apart from yourself, obviously, because I'm already going to give you a massive big pump up in introduction to this, if there's anyone else that you could recommend that people interested in just getting started in mindfulness, meditation, this whole big umbrella of things that we're speaking about, have you got any favorite authors or documentaries or anything that you would recommend? Sorry to throw that on you. I hate it when people ask your favorite book.
No, that's good. I love that question.
I'm looking at all your bookshelves here.
Yeah, there's kind of a lot. I have a bit of a book collection going on, that's for sure.
Is that a C? Oh, no, I thought this was a C.S. Lewis book at the bottom over here that I had, but now I've just leaned around. I've just totally interrupted your question, and it's not even the book I thought.
I think that's my psychology textbook.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, no, I've got lots of books that I love to read. Dr. Russ Harris has a book called The Happiness Trap, and that was one of the first ones that I read, and I loved it. It really simplified to me what my thoughts are. You know, you are taught to believe that your thoughts are the truth, and this book really opened my eyes to my thoughts aren't necessarily the truth. It's just kind of my own little personal narrator that's just telling me all these things that I should believe, and you know, it's trying to keep me safe, and it's trying to, because of, you know, evolution and all these things that are crazy that I never would have even thought of influencing the way that I think. But he kind of explains all of that in a really nice way. So for example, I think he wrote something about with you know, back in a long time ago when cavemen, you know, they had to have that fight or flight response because that's what kept them alive. The problem is that, you know, a threat of a bear about to attack you is very different from doing a work presentation, but it's that same response because all that we do is perceive a threat and then we have our response to that threat. So for me, that was really interesting to discover because I thought, yeah, that's totally true. Like I do have this very strong response to things that aren't necessarily as scary as a bear about to attack me. So it was a really good way to start understanding more about thoughts. And he does talk about mindfulness as well, which I think is great. Oh gosh, there are so many books. The Life Plan by Shanna Kennedy is a really great one. It just kind of outlines different ways that you can improve your life, basically. It's a nice food for thought kind of book. The Calm book is really beautiful as well. It's a very simple look at what mindfulness is and how you can apply it to different aspects of your life. I've only listened to a couple of episodes, but the Mindfulness in 8 Weeks podcast.
I've seen that one always in the top charts. That's pumping, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. And he's actually got a book version of that as well. So I think he wrote the book first and then did the podcast. So that can be a good one to look into as well because the book's great. In terms of websites and blogs, I love mindful.org. They have so many articles on all kinds of topics about mindfulness. It's great. And recently the Breathe magazine came out, which is amazing. I got the first issue and I read through a couple of pages and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to share this like everywhere. It is so good. Yeah, so they have a lot of different articles about mindfulness and yoga and creativity, and I think it's just a really beautiful magazine to sit down and read with a cup of tea and, you know, have just a nice little positive experience. And yeah.
Are we going to see a Mindful Kind magazine coming out anytime soon?
Oh, that is a great idea.
Yeah, I can imagine it.
Maybe, yeah.
So for those listening who might not have picked up, you said you're working 3 days a week outside of your business and 2 days a week you're working, you know, full-time on your thing with your partner who's a guru with the technology and everything. I'm already so jealous. So many people are working a full-time job and they're trying to manage kids and family and, you know, life stuff. But everyone knows what we're talking about, the stress of life. Yeah. And they've still got to go to work full time. So is this something that you have to go out of your way to sit down for half an hour each day? Or is mindfulness the way you describe it? Is it simply an awareness of, or an appreciation for each moment that you're experiencing each day?
Yeah, you've totally hit it on the head there. Yeah, definitely. I have tried more and more to make this idea of mindfulness accessible to everybody. It doesn't really matter what you're doing or who you are or what kind of lifestyle you lead, that we can all, in our own unique ways, in our own individual ways, find different methods of being mindful. So for me, there are things that really resonate, like yoga, but maybe there is, you know, a busy mum who does work full time and has kids and doesn't have time to go for an hour class once a week. But this is where you can get a little bit creative. You know, what do you enjoy doing in your life and how can you do that more mindfully? Maybe it's playing with your kids. Maybe it's cooking dinner. Maybe it's getting up, you know, 10 minutes earlier and just doing a little quick meditation before the kids get up. There are lots of different ways that you can be a bit more inventive with how you choose to practice mindfulness. And there are lots of things that we do as well that we don't realize that we're being mindful as we do them. And I think that's really interesting to acknowledge as well, that we were mindful as children and there are lots of ways that we still are mindful now. We just don't kind of acknowledge it or recognize it as being mindful. You know, if you're having a shower and you're really noticing the warmth of the water or you're smelling your shampoo, you know, that's being mindful. Yeah. It's quite simple. And I think the more that you deliberately practice it, the more you do naturally do it in your own life. That's what I've found.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, actually, because some of my really close mates, whenever I speak about mindfulness, they're like, oh, hippie shit. You know what I mean? And honestly, I feel like there's a lot of people in this scene that are a little bit woo-woo, and I can't listen to it. And I think the reason I wanted to chat with you is because I feel like you're a great exception to that rule. You make it really approachable. You make it really normal.
Yeah.
And what I loved about what you just said then is mindfulness isn't just sitting down and meditating for 20 minutes every day and making sure you do it at this time and just holding your cup of tea or whatever. It could be going out and surfing and enjoying the water and just like being in the moment with that. What I wanted to ask you, and I'm so interested in this, I don't know why it's so interesting. When it comes to daily routines or when it comes to any particular practices or anything that you have, what does a day in the life of Rach look like? What is a day? So from the moment you get up to the time you go to bed, is there any certain rituals, routines, habits that you've implemented to, try and make you better at this mindfulness message you're all about?
Oh, that is a really cool question. I haven't been asked that before, but I love it. There are lots of different things that I do to be mindful, and I think I try to mix it up a lot. So there aren't necessarily a lot of routines, although there are a couple that I do every day, and they don't feel like routines anymore because they're just a part of my life. But because I have kind of such different lives, I guess, during the week. When I go to work, I start at 7 a.m, so my alarm goes off before 6, and it's kind of a little bit of a rush to leave in the morning. And, at first I was like, oh, should I be talking about having mindful mornings? I go on sitting on the train and I do a meditation and everything. And I'm like, yeah, but that's still being mindful. It doesn't necessarily have to mean getting up and doing a meditation and then doing some yoga and then having a shower and, doing all these things. You can really tweak, I guess, your mindfulness practice to suit your own lifestyle. But then on the days that I do have, I do feel like I have, I guess, that more, what people would think is a bit more of a mindful morning. I get up and I do have a shower and I put on my moisturizer and everything quite mindfully, almost like a little bit of a mini massage, or I'll sit down and read a chapter of a personal development book because I just love to learn those things, and I'll have a coffee and, it's a very, I guess, slower kind of start to my day. But I like to think that I have a really rushed day some days and I have a really slow day other days, and I think that's normal. That's how a lot of people do live their lives. More routines and things that I do, there are lots of them. So you can see behind me, I've got all these like little sprays and books and all these little tools that I just kind of keep close by so that I can just kind of reach around. And if I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed, like I really notice in my body now when I feel a little bit stressed.
Yeah.
And that's the time when I know, okay, cool, I'm going to take a moment to just back away from this thing that I'm doing and take a moment to be mindful. I might spray these mists that I've got and just inhale them and say an affirmation. I might decide, I'm going to go to a yoga class tonight and have that time for myself. I do go to yoga probably about 5 times a week.
Do you really?
Yeah. It just is nice to have that time for myself to, to do something that I really enjoy. It's what I love. It's kind of my hobby, but also my mindfulness time. So it works really well for me, and they have lots of different classes. So I can go at 6 a.m. or I can go at 7:15 p.m. and it just works for what I like to do.
And how good is this feeling? I had said this with Jason Garner a couple of weeks ago. It just feels good to be flexible. I'm such a beginner when it comes to yoga that the fact that I can touch my toes now, I'm high-fiving myself. I'm so proud of myself. But
me too.
I can only... Is that right?
I'm so not flexible. So not.
I bet you're improving doing it 5 times a week though, are you?
Yeah, I am slowly. But, if it was a couple of years ago, I probably would have given up because it was this idea that, doing yoga means that you get flexible, and which didn't happen for me. It's like, I get maybe a little bit more flexible, but really not very much. So this idea that I can do something and not be kind of achieving some kind of goal that I've set for myself is nice. I just enjoy doing something that makes me feel good.
Yeah, that's really cool. One thing I like about the little routines and things that people have is I think there's so much noise coming from our culture, whether it's on the news or whether it's advertisements or whether it's just the media in general, whatever it is, preaching at our vulnerability about all the things that we need to improve. Or like we were saying before, we all got that longing for joy, and we all assume that it's just somewhere down the road. And I guess people try and target that in so many different ways, one of which is, hey, buy these clothes, then you'll be happy, or drive this car and then you'll be happy. And we continually fall short. But I think one thing that a lot of us don't realize is that when we're sort of, I guess, mindlessly, for lack of an even better term, okay, perfect, mindful kind, it's probably the perfect term. I think when we're just consuming that without really thinking, I think we start to believe a lot of what this media is telling us. So whether it's on a subconscious level or not, we start to think, yeah, that's right. Okay. And that's why I guess there's such an obsession with wealth and with, status and houses and cars in our culture. But one thing I love about the routines is you're choosing what you consume. You're choosing what it is that you're investing into. You're creating the structure. You're creating the routine around what you actually want to take into your life.
Yeah.
And one thing that I was really interested in asking you about on, taking stuff in is you mentioned that you might read a chapter of a personal development book or something like. What one have you got going at the moment?
I have a couple going at the moment.
Is that right?
I'm reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which I have kind of flicked through before, but didn't take it fully seriously at the time. I don't think I was quite ready to read it yet.
Yeah.
So I'm reading that at the moment, and I'm also reading Secrets of Serotonin.
Oh, really? That sounds like a real psychology book.
Yeah, it is a little bit. I'm a little bit of a nerd. I love to learn things.
Oh, no, claim it. I love it.
It just depends on what I'm feeling like reading. I mean, I read fiction books as well, so sometimes I'm like, oh, you know what, I'm kind of just in the mood to read something a bit easy and light, and I'll just read a chapter of some kind of fiction book. I mean, you can probably see I've got like stacks of library books.
I'm so impressed with your book collection, just quietly.
Yeah, it's
and your DVD collection.
That's not actually mine. That's Jackson. He's the media guru. I'm the bookworm.
So is that right? So I guess your consumption of choice is your books.
Yeah, definitely. I've gotten more into borrowing books from the library lately. Yeah. So the books that I've got are kind of a culmination of my life and trying to collect books. But lately more and more just trying to read books from the library because, it's nice to have a book and read it and then you take it back and then you get a new one and you don't have kind of extra clutter in your bookshelves and books that you only read once and won't ever read again.
Oh, it's such a good point. I got rid of so many books just before Jessie, my wife, and I moved to London and bought a Kindle. And I'd been using a Kindle heaps and heaps, and a couple of weeks ago, one of my friends in London lent me a book and it had like little highlights and little written notes and things through it. And I started to get jealous. I was like, this is ridiculous. And it's sort of nice. Like my mum used to always say, don't you miss holding a book? I'm like, come on, mum, you sound like a hippie. No, I don't. And mum's probably going to listen to this podcast and be like, yes, I told him he would. I really am starting to miss it. And now I've walked into your house and I've seen your book collection. I'm thinking, I've got about 10 books that are at my mum's house right now. They're my favourites of all time that I said, all right, you know what, I'm going to keep these only because, like you said, I had so much crap on my bookshelf that I think it had become like a little bit of a trophy for me. People would come in and go, oh, did you see my bookshelf? Yeah.
Just glance over this way.
You mentioned as well the affirmations. You're a big fan of affirmations.
Yeah.
For people who have no idea what we're even speaking about, an affirmation is like a positive reinforcement, a statement, something that you say to yourself to change your state of mind. I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, and we were laughing about it before, how full on he is and, how in your face he is. And there's something about him when I'm feeling down or tired or whatever that I'm just like, yeah, all right, this is what I needed. He's really big on affirmations.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's too personal or if you're happy to share. What kind of things do you say in an affirmation when you're trying to get yourself, when Rachel's feeling a bit flat and you're trying to get yourself back up or in a different state of mind?
I have one that I pretty much always use. I don't really digress very much from it. It's really simple. It's just, I am safe, I am loved, I am supported. And for some reason, just those words remind me how lucky I am to have love and to be safe. I have a home that I can go back to at the end of the day. I have people around me that I love and who love me and care for me. And it just kind of brings it back to, I guess, what's important for me. And that recognizing those things that make me feel safe and happy, which is, being safe, being loved and being supported. That's really, at the end of the day, the things that I need. So using that for me just makes me feel really good.
That's really cool. It's really cool. On the subject of books as well, I always love to get a couple of book recommendations, and especially the ones that you're speaking about now, because I also have like a little side habit of, I'm going to say this and you're going to ask me questions. I'm not going to know the answer. It's more of an interest in psychology rather than actually any big study of it. But I'm really interested in that scene. Have you got any books? It doesn't have to just be psychology. Any other books that you recommend that you just absolutely love?
Oh, the books that I love.
I'm trying to throw this at you. I hate it when people ask favourite books.
I'm looking over at my bookcase. I'm like, what else have I got on there that I can talk about? Oh, there are a couple of really nice quote kind of books that are just nice to read. Meredith Gaston does them. So she draws the images and collects the quotes. And it's just a really nice book to pick up at the end of the day and just have a flick through and feel a little bit inspired or just feel a little bit comforted by these beautiful drawings. I've got a lot of Lisa Messenger books down there. I think I've got all of them now. I love all of her books. You said you're a little bit of a groupie of the mindful kind. I'm a little bit of a groupie of Lisa Messenger.
Is that right? Yeah.
And the Collective magazine, I've got a lot of those down there. Just learning about business and stuff as well, I guess, is something that I'm quite passionate about. I more so tend to read blogs and websites about business rather than books, but there are a couple.
Is that right? Yeah. So you go to the blogs a little more. What blogs do you read?
Oh, where to even start? So the Huffington Post is a really good one.
Yes.
I like to always just kind of check in there. Mind Body Green is another really good one.
Great one, yeah.
I've written for both of those.
Oh, nice, really,
websites, and that was a really exciting time when that happened. Who else is there? The Daily Guru do a nice mix of well-being and business kind of stuff. They're kind of my main go-to ones at the moment, but there are other kind of smaller blogs just that I like to read. The ConvertKit blog is amazing for business stuff. They do like a topic each month on, email marketing or blogging or something like that, and then just write these really great posts about it. So I love reading them because they're almost like a story. This is going to sound really weird, but you can probably see that a lot of my books are cookbooks.
I did notice my wife's a massive fan of Jamie.
Yeah, I read cookbooks like normal books.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do. It's pretty weird because I don't really use recipes when I cook at all. I'm a bit of an intuitive kind of, I'll chuck this in and see how that goes. And so I hardly ever use recipes, but I just love reading the books. I don't know why.
See, I bet you're amazing at putting recipes together. Whenever I decide that I'm just going to throw a few ingredients together, I'll chuck a little bit of salt in my porridge and be like, oh, look at that. I would never do that.
Oh.
But that would be my version of stepping out and trying to create a great meal. Whereas my wife is the kind of person who, probably like you, can make a great meal just out of nothing.
Well, speaking of porridge, I had porridge this morning.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
It's my little version of apple pie porridge. So I chop up half a green apple and cook it with oats and some water and milk, and then add some cinnamon and some nutmeg, a little bit of vanilla essence, and then at the end, brown sugar.
I wish I came around a couple of hours earlier.
I know, it's pretty good. You'll have to listen back and write that down. It's a
I'm
good
definitely going to.
It's simple, but it's nice.
So what other recipes have you got? So you're a little bit of a fan of the kitchen, hey? So in your downtime, you like to cook?
Yes, I do. I'm not a great baker, I'll be honest. Because I think I am a bit intuitive, I don't normally follow quantities and things like that. So a lot of the cakes and things, it's kind of important, and they don't really work out all that well. But savoury, I love cooking dinners in general. Gosh, where to even start? I love making curries, so doing the paste from scratch, and I don't know, there's just something nice about all the smells and using herbs and using spices that I obviously really resonate with, because mindfulness for me, I love using scents. I love different smells, even bad smells sometimes. It's like, oh, that's an interesting smell. That's a bit
I'll
weird.
try that one out. You mentioned, so diet's a big part. Obviously, that's a ridiculous thing to say. Diet's a big part of your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A healthy diet is a good part of your, a big part of your life. Are there any particular foods or any particular, a lot of people I hear speak about their green juice, like they start their day with a green juice and it just feels like it gets them all up and about. Are there any foods that you absolutely swear by that you have to have each day? Are there anything that you really, when you talk about a healthy diet, I guess, what does your diet look like?
Again, I think it's kind of intuitive and I make it up as I go along. I love cooking, so I just kind of, whatever I feel like that day, when it's cold, I'll make a soup, and when it's hot, I'll make a salad. There's nothing that I really stick to. I'm one of those people that I get bored of eating the same thing very quickly, whereas my boyfriend's like, oh, I could eat the same thing every day.
I'm like that, yeah.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it almost makes me feel nauseous to think about doing that. I love experimenting with different foods. I love food. I don't really have a diet that I stick to. I just kind of listen to my body and what I feel like I want. I have treats. I made a really nice apple crumble the other night. I'm, going to brag about that a little bit because it was pretty good. Jack was like, oh, I kind of feel like having some dessert. And I was like, oh yeah, I might just whip up a little something up here, and came up and made an apple crumble. And I was like, here you go, love. And he was
That is
pretty
amazing
impressed.
effort on your behalf.
It was pretty good. My sweet things don't normally turn out, so that one was good. I was quite happy about that. But I grew up on a farm actually in East Victoria, and my mum has the most amazing garden and vegetable patch and orchard, and has bees to make honey, has an olive farm, makes olive oil, and I love going back there because it just brings it back to basics. And it's like, this is the food that makes me feel good when I eat it. And she's an amazing cook as well. I'm nowhere near as good as she is. She preserves a lot of things. So at the moment, she's got an abundance of raspberries and figs and tomatoes. She was telling me the other day she picked about 25 kilos of Roma tomatoes. I was like...
From her own garden?
From her own garden.
What a legend.
Sweet corn. She brought some of that down the other day. It was amazing. So, yeah, I think just eating foods that actually do make you feel good. I actually do eat porridge a lot. It's one of my favourites, but I like to mix it up with different flavours. And it's just one of those kind of filling things that are cheap and easy to make and keep you feeling full, and they don't have too much sugar or anything in them, so they're a nice way to start the day. I don't really have a lot of smoothies or juices or things. I had my wisdom teeth out actually a couple of months ago, and I had a couple of smoothies and I was like, I'm so over smoothies. I don't think I can do this for a really long time. But yeah, I like to experiment. I always kind of keep an eye out for new food trends, I guess, and just try different things that I like. I've gotten a little bit into kombucha, quite enjoy it.
Yeah.
I had a new flavour the other day. It was like apple crisp and it just tasted like apple cider. It was amazing.
Is that right? Have you got your own SCOBY and things like that?
No, I don't. But my mum was like, I'm going to have to get a SCOBY and make some kombucha because she does all these things. She's making her own kefir at the moment, which is like off milk, basically. And she's like, it's great for gut health. And I'm like, yeah, I bet it is.
What's it called? Kefir?
Kefir, yeah. So, like those little Yakults?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like that, but without the sugar and things like that. So she gets the milk and then she, makes it go off in a good way.
Well done, Mum. I don't know how you did it.
Yeah, and then puts it on her bircher in the morning. So, yeah, I think a lot that I've learned has been from my parents and the way that they lived, which was quite a natural, organic. Of course we had chips and things too, but not very often.
Yeah.
It was a treat. And I think that's how I like to view things now. It's easy living in Melbourne to go out and have all kinds of takeaway all of the time. There's a Macca's just down the road and a pizza shop, two pizza shops almost, next to each other, right opposite the yoga studio, which, would be kind of convenient.
Finish a nice session of yoga and finish off with a pizza.
Yeah, so it's easy to make those choices to go and get it. But, I just enjoy living the way that I do and having the foods that I have. And, I'll have a kombucha as a bit of my little treat. I don't drink alcohol, I think is another kind of, part of my life that's quite important to me. I did used to drink quite a bit. It was one of my not so good coping mechanisms with stress, and I just didn't like the person that it made me into. Yeah. I never knew if I was going to be a really, really happy Rach or if I was going to be a really kind of nasty or upset, emotional Rach.
Yes.
And when I say nasty, I mean nasty to myself, very critical and very what is happening with my life. I'm nobody, thoughts and feelings that kind of were worse than the hangover the next day. Yeah. Speaking of the hangovers, they were terrible. My body did not react well to having alcohol. So I guess that was just a personal choice that I made, and I might have a glass now and then for a special occasion, but I'm just very careful of what I do.
Yeah.
I think put into my body, just noticing what it does and if it has a good impact or a bad impact and making choices based on that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. A red wine girl, were you?
I was actually.
Yeah, it's so funny. I'm a little bit of a red wine fan, and it just sounds like a classic red wine symptom. I don't even know if that's an actual symptom. I just assumed it was because I was like, yeah, that sounds like me. I could go either way if I had too much. So how long ago did you decide to give up the alcohol?
Maybe a year or a year and a half, I think.
Yeah.
It's been a little while. It's not something that I really think about anymore. We just don't have it in the house. And
yeah.
I mean, there were a couple of bottles up there of my brother's stuff, but even that, it just sat there for a year and nothing really happened to it. So, I don't know. I suppose I drink a lot of water and have nice things like kombucha and green tea and coffee, and I love my coffee in the morning.
Good choice. What do you drink, espresso, or you drink... Have you got a little coffee maker that you put it all together with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little coffee maker. It's pretty good. When I'm at work, there's a really nice cafe downstairs. I take my little $3.60, go get my morning latte. And
yes.
It's it's just my nice little time for myself.
Yeah. What about just before we wrap it up, because poor Deck, he's taking the dog out for a walk. He's going to have the fittest dog in the whole world.
I was watching. I'm like, oh, it's not raining yet.
Poor Deck. This is my very last question. I'm just really interested to hear. So, from the time you started the Mindful Kind, how did your family take it? I guess, was it a surprise to your family when you said, okay, this is the angle that I'm going to take, I get it must blow your parents' mind to hear how many people you're influencing all around the world with the Mindful Kind podcast, particularly, and your blog. I mean,
yeah, no, they've always been quite supportive, really. I don't think they fully understood what I was doing, but they were always really supportive. You know, I was working full time at the hospital, and it was coming up to my birthday, and I said that I wanted to do this blogging course. And so they both gave me a little bit of money, and I was like, oh, cool. Now, you know, I've done this blogging course and you guys kind of helped me get started with all this stuff. And I know my mum always downloads and listens to my podcast.
Good
And
on your mum.
I think my dad does too. I'm not too sure, but I know that they both appreciate what I'm doing. I think I always wanted to help people. That's just kind of part of who I am. I love being compassionate. I love being around people. I always wanted to do something that was involved with that. So yeah, the podcast is nearly 800,000 downloads strong now.
Is it really? Oh my gosh. Oh, actually, that's going to be my next question. How many people are listening? That's incredible, Rach.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, I feel like, you know, I feel like I make a difference, and that's what's
You do make a difference,
to me. And I love that feeling. And I think, you know, I always update them with the downloads when I hit another 100,000. I'm like, oh, I guess how many am I now? And yeah, they're quite excited. So it's nice to be able to do that and to have had things happen the way that they've happened. I'm really grateful. I feel very lucky to have things the way that they are.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, despite the fact that I could talk to you for another 7 hours, I am thinking about Deck and your poor little dog that's just taken the biggest
They'll be
walk
loving it.
in history. So we'll wrap it up. But hey, I would love to maybe next time we're in Melbourne catch up, because I honestly still have about a million questions that I want to ask you, but out of respect for them and your dog, I'm going to leave it. But hey, massive thanks for everything you do. And as you say, you are making a massive influence, even on a personal level. I mean, that's the reason I reached out to you, because I'm like, far out, like, just the fact that you're not making it woo-woo, you're making it really practical, and it is really impacting not only my life, but a lot of people in the scene, you know, that I know. So, hey, thanks for all your work.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you to you as well. I was really excited to be part of this podcast, and I share a lot of your blog posts all the time. So I think it's great to be able to connect with you.
Thanks for that love, by the way. I love it. I love it. Awesome, Rach. Cheers. What a superstar. As I mentioned at the start, guys, if you're interested in getting more from that conversation, jump on tysonpopplestone.com/podcast. Click on the episode and you'll get the show notes there. Also, join my newsletter at tysonpopplestone.com/newsletter. You'll get a couple of little cheeky updates from me each week with latest blog posts, updates, and podcast episodes that I think you'll be interested in. Guys, great to have you here. If you enjoy it, we'd appreciate it if you jump on iTunes and give us a little rating, give us a review, share it with your mate, just spread the message. If you don't enjoy it, well, give us another chance. Enjoy, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Big love from Melbourne. I'll speak to you real soon.